Hello, and welcome back. So, this is my second recording for the day, and I'm making this more as a open discussion of the history of the Supreme Court, understanding kind of the development and waves that the Supreme Court has gone through, and the fact that as much as we like to, our ideal is that justice is impartial. The truth is the origins of the Supreme Court, especially when it comes to their ability to judge, review, and even dictate some laws. It's not that simple. So, much like everything, we need to go back to the to the Constitution. So the Constitution only lays out that 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 there should be a third branch, the judiciary. It's very vague and doesn't actually say much. It just establishes the Supreme Court, and the first justice of the Supreme Court is John Jay. And even then, the Supreme Court was very much traveling and would not really have a permanent home until actually very recently. Look up the the Supreme Court never really had a permanent or its own building until recently. Like, look it up. I highly recommend. It's actually very interesting. So, so, and John Jay would serve as Chief Justice, but would also be an important diplomat, ambassador, and really his time outside of reinforcing the Constitution really did not do much in the essence of actually expanding the judiciary's powers. And on top of that, even outlining what the judiciary was supposed to do was very much in debate during the start of the early Republic period, including there being several judiciary acts. The main one that really establishes the early incarnation of it is the Judiciary Act of 1789, I think. And it really isn't until you get to John Marshall, who was appointed by John Adams, the second president, that our image of the Supreme Court really solidifies. Now, this, how we got there is going to be a tangent, so bear with me. So, during the Adams presidency, especially during the breakup of the Federalists and the Democratic Republican Party, it was extremely messy, and Thomas Jefferson, in his role as vice president, did a lot to antagonize John Adams. And when Adams realized he was going to lose the election for a second term, he tried to pack as many courts as possible with Federalists. His time in office, especially between the Alien Sedition Acts, the Quasi War, it did a lot to kind of ensure that, and and the fact that Hamilton basically destroyed the the party he himself helped establish, especially during the ratification process. The fact that Hamilton hated Adams so much he wrecked any chance of a Federalist ever getting elected again, and the fact that the party itself was divided between loyalties between Adams and Hamilton did a lot to ensure Adams wasn't going to get reelected. So, with all that being said, Adams was trying to pack the courts, and when Jefferson appointed Madison to take over as Secretary of State, Madison was trying to clear out as many Adams appointees as he could, and which led to a lawsuit. And during the process, while Marshall was acquiescing to allowing the Jefferson administration to remove some of Adams' appointees, in the wording, basically, Marshall gave the judicial branch the power of judicial review, which is the main power we really associate with them anymore, and was one of the main powers that would pave the way for positive developments like LGBT marriage. So, but it also did a lot of other good things like allowing for interracial marriage, but it also did some bad things like make segregation the law of the land for almost a complete century after Reconstruction. So we need to remember judicial review is a tool, is not something that we can say is blatantly good or bad. It really is a powerful tool that depends on who is holding power. And while Marshall was in charge, a lot of the rulings had Federalist sympathies, even when the Federalist Party itself was basically done as an organization in 1812 and would later redevelop as the Whig Party. So, and when Marshall finally died, the court itself became a very Democrat Republican institution, but mostly Democrat, especially when Marshall's spot as Chief Justice got replaced with Andrew Jackson's appointees, who would be the people that would make the Dred Scott decision a few decades later that would help spur on the Civil War. So, as time goes on, especially post-Civil War, and as the amendments that freed slavery and the expansion of due process, voting rights, and the civil rights amendments in general were getting passed in Congress as part of Reconstruction. When the deal to end Reconstruction and get Hayes elected happened, the death of slavery and the civil rights bills of the Reconstruction era, thanks to the 14th Amendment, Reconstruction really died at the Supreme Court. in many ways. The civil rights bills were were deemed unconstitutional in part through the 14th Amendment and of course the famous Plessy versus Ferguson separate but equal. It really was during this phase where as as the Gilded Age and end of Reconstruction kind of converge, that we see a Supreme Court that is very much aware that it is in the age of imperialism and in the age of post Reconstruction, where a lot of the cases being decided are over legality of unions, monopolies, oligopolies, and railroads. We really don't see any major changes or shifts in the Supreme Court mindset until we get to the era of the New Deal, like when we get into the progressive era where economics and the emergence of a possible revisation of civil rights really get started. And this is kind of where I want things to end, because with the New Deal and the struggle to create Social Security, we also see a struggle with trying to get administration passed in a court that really is aware it's a political tool. And that's something we kind of need to wrestle with ourselves today. It's no longer really a secret that the judiciary has become this tool to pass legislation without Congress, or to reinforce a political agenda. And that is something that unfortunately has turned into one of the most important things about getting your party elected into the presidency, which is controlling the balance of the Supreme Court. Or, as we saw during the Obama era, trying to basically pack as many circuit courts as you can. So this really is kind of a discussion of how do we wrestle with the legacy that the judicial branch started off as something vague and evolved to develop judicial review, and has always in a way reflected a struggle between political parties, economic interests, and basically societal trends. So that is where I'm going to leave you. Have a good rest of your day.